Tonight, election night in America, and the first exit polls are coming in now. What they reveal already. Tonight, we take you inside both campaigns' final hours. The president visiting his campaign headquarters in Virginia, telling supporters winning is easy, losing is never easy. Not for me, it's not. And what he said about declaring victory. Joe Biden returning to his childhood home in Scranton with two of his granddaughters with him, writing a message on the wall, from this house to the White House, with the grace of God. What the Biden campaign is saying tonight about their chances, given what they know about the early vote. And will we hear from Joe Biden tonight, what the campaign is now saying? History in the making in this country. In the middle of this pandemic, more than 100 million ballots cast, even before the polls opened this morning. Americans looking to vote safely in this pandemic and to make sure their votes count. And tonight, late reporting, a judge ordering inspectors to visit mail processing facilities to make sure votes have not been left behind. And on this election day, Pennsylvania, just beginning today to count the more than 2.5 million mail-in votes in that state. If it all comes down to Pennsylvania, this could last well beyond election night. And tonight here, a viewer's guide for you. The states to watch early in the night to hit that all-important number, 270 electoral votes. Florida, the one state President Trump needs. If it goes to Joe Biden, is it an early night? And if the president wins Florida, the multiple other paths for Joe Biden. We'll take you through them. All eyes tonight on Georgia and North Carolina, too. The president's plea to suburban women. Did it work? What we're seeing with seniors across this country, with Latinos and black voters. And tonight, control of the Senate. The key races to watch this evening and what voters are now saying about the most important issue facing this country. The exit polls just in. ABC News election night coverage. A special edition of World News Tonight begins now.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on this election night in America, perhaps the most consequential election in a generation, because of course it comes in the middle of this once-in-a-century pandemic. Americans breaking all records when it comes to the early vote, determined to make sure they were safe in this pandemic and that their vote will be counted. There are huge dividing lines across this nation over how to guide this country through what is still a raging pandemic and what we will look like on the other side. Millions out of work and a much-needed conversation on race in this country. So who will lead us through this next important chapter? The first exit polls just coming in tonight. President Trump at the White House this evening after 14 rallies in 3 days, a massive crowd there in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Today paying a visit to his re-election headquarters, thanking his team, predicting a great night, but adding winning is easy, losing is never easy, not for me. Former Vice President Joe Biden, this rally in Pittsburgh overnight and today in Scranton, where he was born and where he grew up as a boy. And on the wall of his childhood home, he wrote, "From this house to the White House, with the grace of God."
Tonight, the race is over and the counting begins. It's democracy in action as America decides. After nearly 2 years on the trail,
the power to change this country is in your hands.
And 4 years in office,
the best is yet to come.
It all comes down to this. The candidates have had their say.
It's time for Donald Trump to pack his bags and go home.
Is anybody in this audience going to vote for Sleepy Joe Biden?
Now the people will have theirs.
I really want to make sure that I'm here, I'm part of it.
Tonight, the political season reshaped by the pandemic.
We're making that final turn.
Well, we're not learning to live it, we're learning to die with it.
And the deeply divided country on edge, preparing for protests. As we come on the air, the long lines still at the polls. The staggering 101 million people who voted early, and the court order forcing the post office to look for tens of thousands of undelivered ballots. Plus what we're just learning from the exit polls now coming in.
I didn't want to let fear stop me from actually voting on election day.
And the new warning about the sudden surge in COVID infections, why the White House coronavirus coordinator is speaking out tonight, as an extraordinary campaign ends on this historic election night.
This is the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell, reporting tonight from CBS News election headquarters in Times Square.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us to say this country is making history night tonight. might just be an understatement. As we come on the air, the U.S. is on track for its largest election turnout in more than 100 years. Tonight, ballots are still being cast nationwide, even as more than 101 million people have already voted in person or by mail. But while Americans are coming together to vote, they are entering the voting booth on edge and deeply divided, with opposing views of the president's handling of the pandemic and the economy. With some early votes already being counted, a federal judge has ordered postal inspectors to sweep post offices in several major cities and across 15 states to make sure no mail-in ballots have been held up. And tonight, CBS News has learned that the U.S. went on the offense in the weeks ahead of the election, launching attacks designed to thwart interference by countries like Russia and Iran. The candidates spent the day talking with supporters and volunteers. Now they and hundreds of millions of Americans are bracing for the long night ahead. With the race tight in key battleground states, there is a real possibility we still won't know who has been elected president by tomorrow morning. There's a lot of new reporting to get to on this election night, and our team of correspondents is stationed live across the country.
Tonight, a historic election night in America. The first polls beginning to close and voters giving us the first clues in what could be the most consequential election in generations. Donald Trump and Joe Biden, a fight to the finish in the shadow of the coronavirus pandemic. The president today visiting campaign headquarters. His final message to his supporters in a tough re-election battle. Biden at the grave of his son, Beau, then last-minute campaigning in his all-important home state, Pennsylvania. Tonight, the path to 270, the key states to watch. Our team in all the critical battlegrounds. Early voting shattering records, over 100 million votes already cast before today. But late word, hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots delayed. The reminders of the raging virus everywhere, voters wearing masks, and lines for voting right beside lines for testing. Across the country, cities on edge, businesses boarded up, the National Guard in places on alert for potential unrest. And the uncertainty, will we know the winner tonight, or are we in for an election cliffhanger?
This is NBC Nightly News, Decision 2020. Here is Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. From NBC News election headquarters, the first polls beginning to close as we come on the air tonight on an evening that could give us 4 more years of President Trump or propel Joe Biden into the White House. No major issues reported so far as voters cast their ballots across the country, adding their voices to the more than 100 million Americans who have already voted in this election. The president thanking campaign workers earlier as he prepares to watch returns at the White House. Joe Biden ending his campaign in his birthplace, Scranton, Pennsylvania. We have it all covered for you starting tonight with Hallie Jackson.
A presidential pep talk at campaign headquarters in the final hours of the 2020 race.
I think we're going to have a great night, but it's politics and it's elections, and you never know.
President Trump now rallying his own troops after rallying supporters with 5 stops in the last 24 hours. And tonight, 3 key things to watch: the map, the message, and the mood.
We're going to win this state so easily.
Mapping out a win means holding on to key battlegrounds the president took in 2016, where polls now show close races. Campaign sources say they feel good about states like North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, where the First Lady cast her ballot this morning. Advisors acknowledge to NBC News Michigan is an uphill climb, but it's crucial Pennsylvania that could be a tipping point, a state the president campaigned in more than any other. One source describing it as on a knife's edge.
We spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania. It's always been a very good place for me.
The president's message: turn out. With this race, a referendum not just on him.
This isn't about, it is about me, I guess, when you think about it.
But on his pandemic response, as he again incorrectly suggests the country has a handle on COVID cases.
We're rounding the turn, by the way. They hate it when I say it, but we're rounding the turn.
That's contradicted by one of his own top advisors, Dr. Deborah Birx. In an internal report obtained by the Washington Post, she pushes for much more aggressive action, an approach that is not being implemented, she says. The White House, in response, insists they're working around the clock to defeat the virus. The mood inside the Trump orbit: anxiety mixed with cautious optimism, memories lingering of their 2016 come-from-behind win, but eyes on suburban women and seniors who have moved away from President Trump. And for the president himself, a rare, reflective moment.
Winning is easy. losing is never easy. Not for me, it's not.
Tonight, the president's set to once again mix official business with campaign activities. As sources tell me, several hundred people are expected in the East Room for election night. COVID testing required. Lester?
Allie Jackson at the White House tonight. Thank you.